Hi, and welcome to the CAFMA Connect. I'm your host, Fire Chief Scott Freitag. Back with me again this week because I caught up to him is Assistant Chief John Feddema.
Yeah, and what you said was it's going to be really boring, so we're going to bring you on. So be prepared. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's because of what I wrote about in the review this week. It really relates directly to what's happening in our organization right now. And quite honestly, this is a week before Christmas, so not a lot. But plans for January 2nd and moving forward, I think we have a lot of those. But of the topics I talked about in the review this week, I think probably one of the hottest topics on there right now remains our paramedic situation and the issues we're dealing with EMS. And so give me a little bit of feedback, John. What are you hearing on the floor, out in the field? What's some of the feedback that you're getting right now?
Well, it was interesting because we just did 2 probation interviews. They've been on probation for a little while, but just catching up to them has been tough. We did Anthony Aponte, and we also did Andrew Kuntz.
Okay.
So congratulations. They are both off probation.
Congratulations, gentlemen.
Yes. Andrew, had said, very early on in his interview that, no, I want to be a paramedic.
Right.
And it's like, awesome, we need paramedics. And some of the discussion was, with him is like, has there been some frustration among, current medics? And he smiled and said, yes, there's been a number of people that have said, why are you doing that? But to his credit, it's an interest of his, and he wants to do it. And you go back to, I was teasing, we just had our EMT refresher, and I was teasing a captain that walked out because he's like, man, I'm glad I'm EMT. I'm like, you need to be quiet. And,
right.
Yes, EMT is nice, but obviously the medic issue that we have right now is putting undue pressure on the current medics that we have. We see that, we understand that, but it's not just a simple fix.
No.
And there's been some discussion, even in our hiring. We had a couple of medics, in our hiring process, but they didn't make it, all the way to the end. We have offered Jaron Kirk, a job, and he'll be starting the 1st of January, which is awesome.
Right.
So he helps with that medic. But this is a long-term issue that we're having. And so the frustration, my hope is that we can get more folks on the floor. But some of it is we need to encourage some of these folks.
Oh, absolutely.
Go back to the hiring. We want to hire the right people. We don't just want to hire medics to satisfy a certificate. We want to hire the right people. And if we have to, train them to be a medic at that point. So as far as what I you hear, by the time it gets to me, obviously it's usually filtered, but there's frustration. And frustration from the workload to the the reports, to the lack or being a sole medic on a unit and the difficulty associated with that. Also, the challenge of even the local staffing with our ambulances.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know if anybody realized we're still dealing with that. It has not gone away.
It has not. It's a bureaucratic red tape nightmare.
Perfect. That might spruce up the...
Yeah, it'll spruce it up a little bit. Yeah. And just to throw this in, as of December 29th, we will be hitting our 14-month anniversary of submitting our CON application to the state.
It's gone by so slowly.
It seems like just yesterday.
Yes.
No.
So obviously dealing with that, so we're getting, we have a lone medic on a unit that is going to a call with either a BLS ambulance or a lack of an ambulance, having to be on scene longer. We're having to utilize our rescue, and so there's a lot of challenges.
Well, and I think I don't think like dropping a medic license, because we've heard some talk of that on the floor. That doesn't actually help the situation. It makes it worse for that individual who's dropping their medic as well, because I would assume that when you get on a call and you've dropped your medic, so now all you can do is basic life support stuff, and now you have another medic that's on your unit, you can't support them because you dropped it, right? It doesn't change the fact that there's no ambulance coming or that it's a BLS ambulance. So dropping one's medic cert is not a fix for the situation. You're actually making it worse.
Sure.
And it's not that we don't recognize the challenge, because we do. We absolutely recognize the challenge. The difficulty is we have to get more people into medic school, and there is a shortage right now. We're on that tipping point almost of being short, but we're doing okay. Yeah. But we have to get more people into the paramedic program. And for me, when I started my career, and I think I've talked about this before, my grandfather called the city of St. Louis and said, hey, how would he explore a career in the fire service? And they said, number one, don't work here. Number two, get your medic, because in the St. Louis area, you have to be a medic or you're not going to get hired. Yeah. And some of my fondest memories of being in the field were as a medic.
Yeah.
I enjoyed being a fire medic. I was a fire medic on an ambulance that was attached to a fire department, so it was fire-based. And if we got to a structure fire, we were firefighters. Yeah. If we got to a medical call, we were medics. And there was a tremendous amount of work. I mean, we'd run. I remember working a 72-hour shift, and of that 72 hours, I slept 6, just because of overtime issues. But it's one of my most favorite memories of being in the field. And if I could go back, I would absolutely go back and be a paramedic firefighter on a fire-based ambulance.
Yeah.
Because I got to run everything. It was great. And the only reason I'm not a medic today is because I did not have my national registry. So when I moved from Missouri to here, I was still a medic, but it didn't count. And for me to, I couldn't get reciprocity. Basically, I'd have to go back through a program. And I'm like, well, as a fire chief, I don't have a year to sit in a paramedic class.
No.
Especially when I'm not necessarily running the calls.
We don't want you running calls.
Well, it's not it's not that it's not necessarily, it's that I'm not. And you don't, like you said, you don't want me there.
No.
Anyways,
we don't.
People have changed over the years.
Yes, they have. But I think that goes to a couple of things. Obviously, we don't want to just keep, there's part of the solution is we need more medics, and we understand that.
Yes.
The other challenge, I think, and we've talked about this even in the labor management side, is what do we do for the current, medic group
Absolutely.
to make sure that not only are they supported, but they have the tools that they need as well.
Right.
So we've looked at a couple of different things, even from the compensation side, because that's just part of the process.
Right.
Also to the training side is how do we make that process not easier from the standpoint of passing, but easier from the standpoint of access. So what those things that we can do to build on that.
Sure.
And we've talked about obviously nothing's finalized till it's finalized.
Right.
But even looking at how that stipend is done, Doug Naminsky, who's our EMS chief, was talking about maybe even looking at how that stipend is even allocated to be more of a percentage.
Right.
So that way there is a benefit to a medic captain, because we've heard some of the challenges of being a sole medic captain and having to do that role along with manage the scene, and there's definitely challenges to it.
Right.
But you also talk about the value that a medic captain brings from the standpoint of just the overall scene and the patient care. Maybe we need to continue to look at how we compensate to provide that value.
So I'm going to say it here. Just going to be upfront about it.
See?
Yep.
This will get some views.
I'm going to say it right now. We do not compensate our paramedics well enough.
Nice.
I think the market has changed,
and
we have not kept up with the market like we would like to. And from that standpoint, we have had some conversations just in general terms with labor management, with Doug about, is there a better way that we could work this? And I shared with you earlier before we came on, when I got hired as a paramedic, there were 2 wage scales when I came in. There was the firefighter EMT scale and the firefighter medic scale. So what you got paid as a medic was built into your pay, and not a stipend. And then each year, as you got a raise or you got a promotion, your overall salary was based on being a this and a paramedic.
Sure.
And, could a model like that work for us? I don't know. I think that we need to explore options. And then I think you and Doug talked about it. I can't remember exactly what it was, but on the training side, I think we've done a decent job moving our training internal. But is there another way that we could support our medics with training, outside training? And, there's some ideas out there, and I think all of them should be explored to see what fits.
Correct. And we provide a lot of options, and Doug does a great job just making sure that those options are available. But it's generically, it's just hopefully people understand, we continue to look at all aspects of it.
Right.
And that change sometimes happens slowly, but we want to make sure that, this is a critical part of our organization and our operations. And, people just need to know that we continue to look at that.
Yeah. And And the extra workload that our folks are under has not gone unnoticed by us.
Yeah.
And we have worked very hard over the last multiple years trying to improve this system, trying to make things better. And unfortunately, due to circumstances outside of our control, that system continued to degrade and get worse. And the more the worse it got, the more we pushed. But there's just not a light switch to fix it because the problems are not internal with us as far as the overall system.
Sure.
The problems are external, whether you're looking at a private company or you're looking at the state's involvement. It is a significant challenge. And unfortunately, I think we are built to look at patient care and response as how do we best take care of our citizens as well as our people. But we're working within a system that doesn't look at the patient, the system, or our people in the same way that we do.
Sure.
I think that's a politically correct way to put it.
I think that's accurate, yeah.
That's probably one of the tamest ways I've ever
correct. I don't feel that even that bad right now. Sometimes I feel bad or awkward just sitting here listening to what comes out. But that was perfect.
Oh,
I'm
look
good.
at that.
Yeah, maybe I'm growing. I don't know.
It could be you.
Yes.
I mean, I doubt that there's any growth here other than from the medications I've been on. Yeah. It's, but I think when we look at it, we recognize the problems, but they don't. You all in the field don't always get to see what we're trying to do behind the scenes to make it better.
Yeah, and sometimes obviously we try to communicate some of the activities that are being worked on, but we also try to balance that as well because we can work on something and then nothing comes to fruition. Part of it is maybe we don't have control over all of it. We've been working on hydrants this last year and trying to pull that off of the engine companies because I don't think that's a responsibility they should be doing.
Right.
But it's taking some time. And obviously they're still having to do the work, and we still appreciate all the work that's being done. But we are actively trying to figure out how do we continue to get some of that workload that is secondary to the call volume that is growing. How do we get that off?
Well, and I think as we look at the fire hydrant situation, we're starting the largest area in which we have hydrant responsibility is Prescott Valley.
Yep.
And so we're starting that conversation with them. And I think the conversation's going well. Implementing something it takes a while because we are government. We're working with other governmental entities.
We are government working with other government. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So things move at the speed of government. Faster than if you're at the state, but slower than you all in the field would like to see. Yeah. Now, I think I was talking to somebody the other day because we were talking about public education. I think as we move towards our accreditation, one of the most glaring holes that I can identify right here and now is a lack of public education. And I was talking to someone and I said, I would trade fire hydrants for our crew's ability to engage at a little bit higher level with public education all day long. Because when we look at industry standard, as progressive as we like to think we are, we're way behind in that area. And it's an area that we need to step up our game. But when we have the crews spread so thin with the paramedic issues, with the hydrants, with some of the business inspections, many of which have been moved off of the crews, it's a challenge, not necessarily prioritizing, but getting the work done. Yeah. And the fire hydrant is more specific reactionary life safety. Public education will find somebody at some point is kind of the approach it's been. And I think that's an area that we really need to work to improve. But as we move forward, I think it's important for everyone to know how much we do appreciate and understand the extra work that you've all done to make sure that our citizens are well cared for.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, to still make this a great organization that we're a part of, and proud to be a part of, because we have no different than we started strategic planning yesterday with the gentleman that came in, and we asked what is going well, and it's like, man, there's a lot that we do well, and I think Dave described it well from the pride, that obviously it not only is in the compass, but that I think a lot of folks take in the organization and the job that they do, and it's that pride that goes a long ways to help us navigate even these difficult times when it's not ideal.
Exactly, and I think through the strategic planning process, this concept of paramedics, the challenges that we face today, when he asks what are some of the risks that we have, well, one of those risks is a shortage of paramedics, maintaining the paramedics that we have and finding a way to better compensate and provide for them, sure. And then encouraging newer members to take on the challenge of going to paramedic school.
Encouraging. Did we all hear that?
Encouraging,
yes.
Encouraging. We have 10 recruits out there at the academy right now. I would encourage you to look at paramedic school. They are definitely
being encouraged, so we just got to maintain that when they come out of the academy. They keep encouraging.
Well, and like I said, I think being a paramedic has been one of the most rewarding parts of my career. Don't get me wrong, I love being in this position. I feel like we've been able to do a lot with this organization and for our folks. But there are some areas that we're still struggling to meet the demand, the need. But I really enjoyed being a medic, being on the rig, going to classes and learning more and understanding how the body works and the dynamics. I'm not good with math, but the rest of it, I just really enjoyed that. And I would. A lot of folks in our position say, if I could go back to riding backwards on a truck, that's what I would do. Yeah. And that's not me, because if I was riding backwards on a truck, we were super busy, don't get me wrong, on the engine, but I felt like as a medic on the ambo, I was able to run to far more calls. And personally, I like being busy and I like to run calls. It's enjoyable to me. Sure. So from that standpoint, we recognize the challenges and we're trying to work through and ask for your patience, and hopefully you understand we hear you and we're working on it. We're trying.
I think go back to what we're working on. I think that is, you already mentioned about strategic planning,
right?
And accreditation. Like anything else, we got to be careful that we don't just target one aspect, even the paramedic side, because as soon as you try to go target and if you solely focus on one area, we're dropping all kinds of other avenues. And I think that's what's going to help with the strategic planning is taking all the organization and looking at as a whole, including paramedic pay, including the prevention and the public education, all that stuff, looking at it and making a more strategic plan on how we overcome some of that. And I think, again, accreditation is going to take, at least 3 years probably. I mean, that's what even Hoger, Chief Durer said in regards to if you want to do it right, it should take you that long. And I think that's exactly what we want to do, is do it right, do it well, because it doesn't do us any good if we don't do it well.
I heard Chief Parra say that he could do it right and do it well in like 18 months.
I think that was post some other work, but
okay. I'm
just standing up for him.
I'm just hearing the stash saying I can get this done.
I think the stash was lying.
And we're not going to push him, because that is one of the reasons that we dropped accreditation with CYFD, is because they wouldn't work with us to defer for a year so we could do it right. And they offered us the opportunity to kind of check a box and not even completely check it. And that's not the organization we wanted to be. No. Nope. And it's not the organization we want to be today. So we want to take as much time as it takes to ensure that when we present a package for consideration by the accreditation board, that we've given them something that they can look at and say, this is the model. Yeah. This is what people should turn in. And we know there's some holes in there, and I think this strategic planning process we're going into is going to help us identify those. This is the first time that we're bringing in an outside consulting firm to move us through the process. And Doug, the owner of Advanced Strategies, he came up this week to visit with us. He is currently working with Phoenix, or getting ready to work with Phoenix Fire. He's done 2 strategic plans, getting ready to start the 3rd with Scottsdale. He just worked with Prescott, just finished up with Buckeye. The feedback on his approach and his organization has been fantastic from everybody that we talked to. With that said, and what I outline in the review this week is that this is a true 360 of our organization. And so While we don't have the logistical plan quite yet, the fact of the matter is every individual within this agency, including Jonah, will have a secure link, and they will take part at some point in an online facilitated process. And the overarching theme is, where do you think we are today? Where do you think we're going to be tomorrow? And what are the risks that you see ahead of us? And everyone out there is going to have the opportunity anonymously, because while it is virtual and guided, there's no cameras, no video cameras, no names associated with anything. Yep. You can just sit behind the screen with your monitor and fill in the blanks as he posts the questions. Yeah. So it truly is getting that input from everyone. Subsequent to the internal, we'll do an external facilitated process. Yep. Community stakeholders, elected officials, to get that feedback. Ultimately, as we get something crafted, drafted, and put together, that's going to go back out to all of you, kind of in a similar format, to validate it. Do you think what we've come up with captures what you've shared with us? Yeah. Are we on the right track? And I think when you have a 360 of the organization and that many people providing input on a strategic plan, and then you have an accreditation process with a third-party entity evaluating all of your operations, I think it helps guide us into the future.
Correct. Well, and I think go back, we talked about it, go back and see CYFD's history and some of the challenges that we had. I think strategic planning and the accreditation process got us through some of those challenges, right, to get where we're at today, and I think they were helpful. So it's not that we foresee challenges ahead, but I think all of this just helps us navigate that if we have to deal with that in the future. And go back to strategic planning. We want that input. I think that's what hopefully Doug can help do and facilitate, is get that input, because at the end of it, it's not our plan like you and I. It's our plan as an agency, as an organization. Right. This is the plan, and we want that input, because we can view something from 30,000 feet and miss something that is going on at ground level, and we want to know what is going on at ground level, right? So that we can look at it from a 30,000 foot view and say, hey, here's how we're going to accomplish this and overcome this in the future. Sure. But we need all input from everybody, and I think that's what's going to be key when we go through this, so that we make our plan as an organization. And no different than accreditation. Accreditation is just highlighting our organization as a whole. Yes.
Well, and I think the accreditation process, where we're going to create a regional standards of cover with our partners in Prescott and putting that together, it's just going to enhance what we had in the past, because it does then paint a true picture of where the system is, which gives Chief Dura the opportunity to go back to his council and say, here's what this shows. As a professional in this field, here's what I think, here's what we believe we need. Yeah. What are you willing to support? And we'll be doing the same here.
Yeah, with the same plan.
Yes.
With the same standard. So.
Yeah, and identifying up front, hey, we need to build new infrastructure, stations, for example. Then we sit down at the table with Prescott with a map that says, here's what enhances the overall system for everyone. One of the areas that I think we identified yesterday with Doug, and we've talked about it before, is a risk for us is culture. And culture from the standpoint of a majority of the people who work here today grew up in this area, have a connection to this area in some way. The cost of living has gone up so much in the last several years that it is become a barrier to entry into the housing market or even the rental market. So from that standpoint, how do we address that issue? Because as you hire more people in from who have no connection and they live outside the area, you see less involvement and activity in the community, which means less connectivity between everyone. And I think over time, it could, if we're not careful, start to erode some of the culture we have here, which is very community-centric. Yeah. I don't have anybody that has the answer to that question. Please let us know. Yeah. I know Chino Valley School District, they're moving along forward with 30 acres that they have and some grant funds from the state to maybe put up some housing units for teachers. I'm in. Yeah. How do we make it happen? Those are some of the areas that we need to address and work on, and those are just a couple of the more, hey, here it is, it's right out in front of us. Yep. Definitely not low-hanging fruit.
No.
Because there's significant challenges, but I think this will help set a path. Now, we senior staff in January are going to set a meeting where our entire focus is on what's our wish list for staffing, right? Because we need to go to the board now that 310 has failed and say, here's what we need. Here's what this looks like over the next 3 to 5 years. Yeah. Here's the cost associated. What are you comfortable with? Mm-hmm. Because the bottom line is, in order to staff to meet demand, we have to increase the tax rate.
Well, I think it goes back, like I say, to strategically approaching this.
Right.
Where it's not just a dump of like, hey, we want this because we just want more.
Right.
It's looking at what is the need and how are we going to satisfy that need.
Right.
And it's not just trying to throw personnel at it, but at the same time, we need, like I say, truly look at the overall staffing plan and make a plan to accomplish that over time.
Right.
And strategically. Again, so we can present that to the board in a reasonable package. So again, it's not just like, hey, we're just going to slap this down. We want this because
right.
we're running more calls, babies are going to die. Whatever the argument is, we don't want to do that. We want to look at it and bring them something that is packaged well to say, here's where we're at, here's where we want to be. We think we can accomplish that in this time frame. Here's the cost.
Well, and I think that's where Doug is going to come in and challenge us a little bit because it's easy for us to look at the data and say, we need another 24-hour engine.
Sure.
Great. If I'm a community member, if I'm a board member, my question should be to staff, what is that going to do? How is it going to improve our reliability rating? Mm-hmm. Is it going to decrease response times in this certain area? What can we expect as the benefit to putting this engine up in service? Especially since we know right now, based on infrastructure costs today, $8 to $10 million for a fire station, we don't just have that money.
No.
We're going to need to approach the community in 3 to 4 years about a bond. Mm-hmm. So even if we get to that 24-hour engine we need in 3 years, because it could take that long to hire enough people, we're going to have to double staff a station.
Oh, yeah.
And, if we do, we know we want to put it here, but we're going to have to put it here for now. So what does this do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And those are things that should be in our strategic plan.
Yeah.
And they should be clearly articulated, including the benefits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, John, with that, I know we're recording on Thursday. Jonah has to get this thing all put together, so we'll just close it off. Rockstar's still not a sponsor, but there's opportunities for sponsorships.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think so. I think there are opportunities here that exist. Last podcast next week, we will be joined by Santa and Mrs. Claus. Santa! Yeah, I know him. Do you know him? They've cleared their calendar. We're still looking for letters to Santa from CAFMA Kids. We only have a couple right now. And as I said in my email out to the partners email list today, hey, not just the kids, if you would like us to poke fun at your significant other, please send me an email directly, and we will make sure that happens for you because we care.
It's nice that they're willing to stop by at such a busy time.
Oh, I know. I don't know how we score them each year. And they've been out doing good works already with the Firefighter Angel Foundation.
Very nice.
Don't forget next week too, deliveries, Firefighter Angel. If you have time, can volunteer to help out. Please come in. I would tell you what the schedule is, but Chief Rose is in charge of that and has yet again failed to provide the schedule. Yeah. I just want to put that out there.
Perfect.
For that. So, great. Thank you for watching. Please hit like and subscribe. And until next week, well, it's Christmas next week, so don't do anything to get yourself in trouble with Santa.